It is an eventful time of year along the coastlines and river systems of what will one day be the United Kingdom, as swimming in from the open ocean in their hundreds of thousands are a species of fish. This species have spent the majority of their lives out at sea, but now, much like modern salmon, they are returning to the freshwater rivers and lakes where they were born. It is an epic quest that takes them countless of kilometers inland, so they can spawn the next generation. Such a massive movement of potential food attracts countless predators to the waterways they swim up every year, from pterosaurs that patrol the coastline to crocodilians that guard the river mouths. But the largest carnivores that take advantage of this migration is a species of dinosaur, Baryonyx. These are spinosaurs, and they have some of the family's most recognizable traits: long narrow jaws with thin teeth, broad tails, and large forearms with 3 fingers. The first finger bearing a massive curved claw over 30 centimeters in length. For them, the mass migration is the most important event of the year, an all-you-can-eat buffet of their favorite meal. Because despite getting a fair amount of their food from the land, Baryonyx are specialized piscivores. They can and do eat other dinosaurs, but can usually be found hunting along the shores of rivers and lakes, always on the lookout for a water-bound meal. There are only a select amount of paths the fish can take on their journey, and so the Baryonyx will travel for days in order to get a good spot and be in time to stake their claim. The rivers near the coast usually don't have any Baryonyx present. It's not till the water goes from brackish to mostly freshwater that they start to appear. These large predators use multiple tactics in their day-to-day lives in order to catch fish. These include swiping at the water with their long claw, like a gaff, to impale them on their hooked claw or fling them onto land. Other approaches require more patience. On the tip of their snouts, they have special sensory pits, much like those of crocodiles, that allow them to pick up movement in the water. It is a common sight to see a Baryonyx simply standing waist deep in a river, with their mouths agape, and submerged, waiting for a fish to swim between their jaws before snapping them shut, securing a meal in a flash. But now, with the rivers teeming with fish, tactics change. Some even go swimming in the deeper water and try to catch them using the speed generated by their tails. But no matter how fast they go or how congested the fish are, they rarely manage to catch any. It is often the younger or more eager Baryonyx that try this, and in that regard they may just be chasing their prey for the sheer fun of it. Further away from the ocean, some rivers narrow or become shallower, forcing the great swarms to slow and bunch up. It is in these areas that the spinosaurs gather in numbers. The usually territorial predators now tolerate each other, as there is more food here than they could feed on 100 times over. In the narrow sections of the river, each one picks out a spot a few meters away from any other Baryonyx and settle in. Sometimes there are scuffles when 2 or more get within each other's space, but this usually only involves a quick snap of the jaws or a hiss, and then everyone goes back to fishing. Up and down the river, jaws snap into the water, or long claws swipe at the surface as each tries to claim a prize. Some even dive in, sending the schools in front of them scattering in all directions or jumping into the air. In the narrower sections, the Baryonyx don't even have to try. The density of the fish is so great they simply plunge their long snouts into the water and can come up with up to 3 fish at a time. The usually patient dinosaurs can sometimes get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of potential food swimming past them, and resort to jabbing at the water over and over again. They even get greedy and try to carry multiple fish in their claws at the same time, only to drop them all as they flail out of their grasp. More experienced individuals know catching one at a time will eventually fill them completely, but they also know the best fishing locations. The best of all is a part of the river where there is a drop creating a small waterfall. It is only about 30 centimeters high, but the fish have to leap into the air and scale it in order to continue, and waiting at the top of the waterfall is a line of Baryonyx. Just like modern grizzly bears, these hunters know the fish are vulnerable here, and what is better than food literally throwing itself into your mouth? At about a dozen meters wide, 4 large males wait eagerly with some others lingering behind them, and more still wade through the chest-deep water. Now at the height of the migration, multiple fish propel themselves into the air, instinct forcing them to get upriver no matter what. Holding their heads low, the 4 Baryonyx snap their jaws at the barrage of fish, catching one and then quickly swallowing it down, before lowering their heads again for another round. No matter how many fish they catch, countless more make it past them, though a few more then get run down by the individuals behind the front line, the fish often being too exhausted to escape. There is so much to take, the Baryonyx can afford to be picky. Instead of swallowing the fish whole, some of them strip the flesh off the bodies and then dump the ragged remains into the water or onto the shoreline. Others only eat the heads in order to digest the nutritious brains, and so decapitated fish aren't an uncommon sight either. This draws countless scavengers like Eotyrannus that are far braver at this time of year, as the large Baryonyx are simply too busy to worry about the mounds of stripped or decapitated fish bodies. During this migration, countless Baryonyx come and go with the goal of fattening up as much as possible. One bites into the water and accidentally grabs the tail of another of its own kind. The bitten predator cries out in alarm and lunges in response. The first Baryonyx turns tail and runs out of the water and onto the sand, but his pursuer keeps after him trying to bite his tail. Downriver, another eager fisher slashes the water with his claw, throwing one fish into the air. 3 Baryonyx see this and each crane their necks up to catch it. 2 move too early and slam into each other before smacking down into the river, while the third gracefully snaps the fish up in the very tip of her jaws, as if she had done this 100 times before. Away from all this, a mother and her offspring stand together in a safe part of the waterway. Here she can show her young how to properly fish in peace, assuring they have the best chance of survival. All of this will barely make a difference to the vast numbers of fish heading inland, where they will find their breeding ground and spawn the next generation. Hello fellow travelers and welcome back. Today we will be breaking down the genus that changed the face of the Spinosaur family, Baryonyx. The first remains of Baryonyx were discovered in 1983 by an amateur fossil collector in the well-clad formation of Surrey, England. Originally he only found the claw, which he took to the Natural History Museum of London, and a proper dig was done later in the year. They excavated over 2 tons of rock, which they would slowly remove the fossils from over the next 6 years. Overall, 65% of the skeleton was preserved, and in 1986 it was given the name Baryonyx walkeri, the genus name meaning heavy claw, and the species name being after the man who found it, William J. Walker. At the time, this was a massive find, as the last significant theropod in the entire UK was Eustreptus spondylus back in 1871, with Baryonyx also being referred to as the best find of the century when it came to European dinosaurs. It goes without saying, it was a pretty big deal. It is not only one of the best preserved theropods known from Europe, but still to this day, the best preserved skeleton of any Spinosaurid ever found. In the following years, more remains would be found in other countries. However, in recent years, many of these fragmentary individuals would be assigned to their own genuses, including in 2021, where 2 new species were named. Seems this area was a hotspot for Spinosaurs. Baryonyx itself lived during the Barymian age of the early Cretaceous, between 130 and 125 million years ago. It was a member of the Spinosauridae family in the Baryonychidae subfamily. In life, it grew to between 7.5 and 10 meters in length, stood 2.5 meters tall at the hip, and weighed between 1.2 and 2 tons. Being so complete, it played a crucial role in understanding the anatomy and evolution of Spinosaurs as a whole. Like many others in the family, it had an elongated, narrow skull filled with slightly curved teeth. a sturdy barrel-like body with long powerful hind legs, and long, strongly built forearms with hooked claws. This appearance of crocodile-jawed theropods that could have been semi-aquatic has become a standard for most of the Baryonychidae family across the globe. But let's break down its anatomy in more detail. Starting at the rear, we have almost nothing of the tail, the importance of which will be discussed later. The vertebrae were similar to other theropods, having openings called fenestra and a system of air sacs to lighten its weight. Going down from the neck, the vertebrae go from short and thick to being taller and broader. In the center of the back, the positions of the vertebrae indicate there may have been a shallow hump-like structure, though it's definitely not to the extremes of the Spinosaurus or even Ichthyovenator. We only have the upper legs, but they were strongly built, easily capable of holding up the entire animal, unlike some previous theories that thought Baryonyx was the first known quadrupedal theropod. Moving up to the forearms, they are quite large compared to most theropods, but normal for a Spinosaurid. Parts of the arm bones, such as the scapula, humerus, and radius, were short but broad and robustly built, giving the animal plenty of strength. Each hand had 3 fingers. The second and third were long and had curved claws, but the first was far thicker and had a much larger claw. This claw measured 31 centimeters on the holotype, but would have been longer in life as it would have been covered in a keratinous sheath. What it may have been using it for will be covered later. Finally, we get to the skull. Though the holotype was missing a few parts, it is estimated to have been between 92 and 95 centimeters long. As we can see from this view, the skull was not just elongated, but very narrow, being compared to the modern gharial from India. The nasals were further up in the middle of the snout, and may be an adaptation for a semi-aquatic lifestyle. Taking a look at the tip of the top jaws from below, we can see that the jaws narrow and then widen out into a spoon-like shape, and the area is packed with teeth. From side view, the top jaw also has a notch in the upper jaw known as a subrostral notch. At the tip of the lower jaw, we can see that it curves upwards, so when the jaws were closed, the lower jaw slid neatly into place, despite the teeth being quite large. The rest of the lower jaw was tall but narrow, being described as blade-like. So much so, it said the back third of the lower jaw was quite fragile. The teeth themselves were described as recurved cones. They had very long roots and curved uniformly, with serrations on the front and back of the crown, unlike later species that become straight and conical. The largest teeth are at the front of the jaws and decrease in size to the back of the jaws. The exact amount of teeth is unknown, but it's thought to have had 6 to 7 in the premaxilla and 32 in each dentary, which is high for a theropod. Between the eyes, Baryonyx had a thin triangular crest, but it also had 2 small horns over the eyes, similar to many other theropods like Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus, but nowhere near as large. Baryonyx was the first dinosaur discovered to be labeled as a piscivore, or to have fed mainly on fish. Looking at the skull, it's easy to see why, as like later discovered members of its family, is very similar to crocodilians, good for sweeping through the water to catch and hold onto slippery fish. The massive first claw was assumed to have been used as a gaff to swipe at fish and puncture them or hook them out of the water. We have direct evidence of its diet, as fish remains were found in the holotype's stomach, but so were the bones of a juvenile iguanodontid, leading some to believe it scavenged the already dead herbivore. For such a large animal, it should be no surprise that Baryonyx was fully capable of overpowering and then consuming other dinosaurs. Like pretty much all modern predators, it would have been opportunistic, and wouldn't pass up an easy meal, whether it be aquatic or terrestrial. Why people want to put animals into categories like it only hunted X and couldn't possibly hunt Y doesn't make any sense, and to be blunt, just isn't how nature works. So how did it go about acquiring its aquatic prey? Was it wading in the shallows and striking like a heron? Was it laying on the riverbed with jaws wide open only to snap them shut in the blink of an eye like a snapping turtle? Or was it racing after them in bursts of speed like a dolphin? Well, Baryonyx was not as adapted to aquatic life as later Spinosauroids like Spinosaurus itself and Ichthyovenator, which had very broad, flat tails like those of crocodiles and newts. However, as stated earlier, we do not have any good remains of Baryonyx's tail, which would change the way we examine how the animal lived a lot. Did it have a typical theropod tail, or one more suited for swimming? Hopefully more finds will help with this. The subrostral notch at the front of the jaws would have been excellent for grabbing onto slippery prey in the water or snatching up small terrestrial prey, and then either swallowing them whole or moving them to the back of the jaws to be held more securely. If prey was too large to swallow in one go, it's theorized the strong arms and large claw would have been used to break apart or dismember its catches, as the long snout wasn't as effective at tearing as other theropods. Spinosaurs in general had denser bones than other dinosaurs, which is a common trait seen in vertebrates that spend a lot of time in the water, from seals, penguins, crocodiles, and others. This is to counteract the animal's buoyancy, and hints that Spinosaurs as a family were spending a decent amount of time in or around the water. But different members would have fit different niches depending on their size, available food, other predators in the area, and how adapted they were to either terrestrial or aquatic living. Remember, there were two other species of Baryoconidae living alongside Baryonyx. Looking at the evidence, we know that it had a varied diet, and so was capable of preying on almost anything in its environment, but fully equipped to catch fish and other aquatic prey, which other carnivorous theropods weren't adapted for, which may be a reason why they were able to spread across the globe, and in some cases become far more aquatic down the line. Though this didn't start with Baryonyx, it's an excellent sort of blueprint for the family as a whole, and we're lucky to have such good remains for just the holotype. But what do you think of Baryonyx? And for my question of the week, do you prefer the more terrestrial Baryoconidae, or the more aquatic Spinosaurinae, and why? What lesser known dinosaur would you like me to do a breakdown on next? And until then, please like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching. So why didn't I use the Jurassic World Baryonyx in this video? Because this isn't Baryonyx. Where's the tall thin jaws? Where's the single large claw? Why does it have crocodile osteoderms? Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom didn't give us Baryonyx, it gave us Crocosaurus Rex. They took everything unique about the animal and made it something else. The Suchomimus, on the other hand, from Frontier, is damn near perfect, and that's why I used it instead. I mean, look at the difference, it's night and day.